Well, speaking about Wayne Gretzky, we do have some Wayne Gretzky trivia for you. Since
This is when we turn the microphone off.
You figure the master distiller at Wayne Gretzky should know a little bit about the boss.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Super Social Club. I'm Jeremy.
This is Whisky in the Six. I'm Rob.
Welcome to the Whisky Rant Podcast.
It's a little crusty,
It's frustrating.
and it's going to be a little bit of a rant.
I don't understand it. I don't know why.
Some sort of injustice.
Anyway, end rant.
Hello and welcome back to the Whisky Rant Podcast. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Rob.
And today in studio, special guest Tim Wilson from the Wayne Gretzky Distillery here in Ontario. Master blender, master distiller, winemaker, beer maker. Is there anything that you don't do?
Brandy maker as well.
Yeah.
Brandy. Actually, it was funny. Like you mentioned, making things. Like, have you guys listened to Michael Espy's podcast, Whisky Cast?
Yeah.
And Andrew Wilson was talking about that last month about how, as a maker, you always just make things. And I think my entire life has just been like that. Like,
Yeah.
my story, I mean, I started making beer when I was 14.
Oh, wow.
So,
The rules are different in Australia, I
I
guess.
was going to say, from Australia originally, how long did you live there before you moved over?
So I mean, as I said, I started brewing beer when I was 14.
Right.
That was kind of where I started, and then I wanted to go to university to do brewing. That was kind of where I wanted to end up.
That's cool.
At that point in time, though, all the big breweries in Australia, the big master brewers or whatever you want to call them, they all had winemaking degrees because of the biochemistry and the microbiology that was involved with a bachelor's program in wine. So I actually then ventured into winemaking straight from high school. That's kind of how I got into it.
Well, cool thing about the Wayne Gretzky Distillery is that now you're releasing product that's 100% your distillate.
Correct.
Right before, you guys were doing some mixed ventures, and you don't like to call it sourcing cast, but how would you like to describe what you guys were doing before this?
Yeah, I mean, we have partners that that assist us with our volume. I mean, originally when the program was launched, we had no vision of it being as big as it is today.
Uh-huh.
I mean, across this year, we'll do across all the products, we'll do probably about 400,000 litres of bottled goods.
Okay.
Wow.
There was no vision of that when we started. So we obviously launched the whiskey program back in 2017 or 2016, sorry, and the story wasn't built till 2017 finished.
Okay.
So we had some assistance in the early days, and now we're hoping to move towards some more of the stuff we're going to try.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time. Like, I've heard some buzz about this because, like, you seem to have this, like, reputation now that it's like, okay, we've got Tim's, this is his stuff now. So, like, this is the exciting stuff to, like, for the whiskey nerd to go after. So why don't you tell us the two bottles you got in front of us right now?
Yeah, so we've got the brandy, which is in our first glass. You feel free to have a bit of a taste of that if you like, lads. And then we've got the signature rye. So the brandy came about as part of being in Niagara. We wanted to make sure that we always had a product from grapes. And again, being Andrew Powell Limited, we are a wine company, so we had that synergy already. So we always wanted to produce a brandy of some descript. We started off with a white brandy. Josh was distilling that back in 2017 when we had no walls in the building. Which was interesting, but we wanted to get that product out for launch. So initially we were doing basically white or unaged brandies.
So white as in aged in like a metal tin or metal
vat? And even it was just similar to how you would do vodka, right?
Okay.
Like we'd distill quite high initially, and then also we'd take very, very tight cuts.
Mm-hmm.
So because it was going to be a white spirit, you don't have the nuances of allowing the barrel to take and get rid of those some harsh edges. So those cuts on the pot still were very, very tight.
Right.
But what that meant also was that we had all this excess on each side of the hearts cut, and we actually then would reblend all those back together, similar to like you reuse it with single malt scotch, but we would reuse it all back together and redistill and then put it into barrel, and that's how we kind of got to this point.
Okay. All right.
So 40%, I took a few sips already, and I'm actually very impressed.
Pack some flavor. Hey?
It's really nice.
The finish is longer than you would expect, I think, for a brandy. Like, when's the last time you even had a brandy? We don't drink that much brandy.
Well,
but
I have cognac periodically.
You've had some good ones.
Yeah, so cognac, Armagnac, those are technically brandies. But, I mean, I don't know if I've ever had a Canadian brandy. This is a first.
Yes.
That's a good point. Another vibe.
American brandies I've had.
Sure.
Not very good ones, but I've had some American brandies.
And a lot of them really dose that vanilla too. Like
right.
I find with the American brandies, like
EW or whatever it's called.
Yeah. But with this one here, like this was a mix of Sauvignon Blanc, Muscat, Gamay, and Vidal.
And these are all grapes that you're growing on the vineyard.
Correct.
Yeah. Love that.
Yep. We don't obviously get supreme pick of the grape varietals just based on cost and what's available. Like Sauv Blanc, for example, I'd love to make a lot more brandy out of Sauvignon Blanc, but it's a variety that has a lot of winter die-off and things like that. So
Goes to winemaking as opposed to...
exactly, yeah.
Right.
It's a very expensive process to devote a vineyard to making brandy because it's just such an expensive product.
This is, I guess, steering a little off topic, but since we're talking Gretzky's and it's a vineyard and a distillery and all those fun things, what's the process with after the wine is made? What do you do with the skins and the excess from the... Is that what you're distilling or...
No, so my policy with pretty well anything I make is good in, good out. You hear that all the time from producers. So if you're going to make like grappa where you're throwing sugar and water into skins...
He was waiting for you to say grappa.
Yeah.
He loves grappa.
And, but like that's... You're taking the, the hooves and feet
Right.
of...
essentially.
Of
Italians don't like to waste.
So no, this is... we'll take those varieties and we'll have them pressed. And we'll take that juice then, and then we basically make wine out of it first.
Okay.
Just with some different processes in that we obviously can never add sulfur, so we have to make sure with the vineyard, whoever's looking after those particular vineyards, we have to allocate to this so they don't use sulfur sprays.
Interesting. Okay.
Because it's very common in vineyards to protect from bacterial growth
Right.
and molds, etc. On the vineyards to use sulfur sprays. Yeah. So we obviously with spirits when we're going from like say 7,000 litres down to 300 litres because you're concentrating as you're distilling, that sulfur is going to come through. So you really got to try and avoid it. Otherwise, you end up losing a lot of your spirit to the head's cut because of just how much sulfur is in it.
Yeah.
That honestly is really nice. I'm actually very impressed.
It's very creamy.
Yeah, originally it started at this particular bottle started at $49.95, and then because it's a 4 to 5 year product, the run out then was like 6 months. And we're like, we're going to be off shelf.
Yeah.
So then it went to $59.95 to slow it down, and it kept going. So now it's at I think $79.95 or $69. I think it might be $79.95. But
see, it's one of those things that if you know, right? Because we haven't tried it, so we haven't been pulling the trigger on it, and now I know.
And
it's
I'm
actually
assuming
really
the same
good.
thing's happening with the rye as well.
yeah, so the rye, we get all our rye grain from down in Brant County. We get that from Brant Mills. We use a Prosecco rye. So the first probably I'd say 12 months of the distillery back in 2017 when I started, I was lucky enough again to start at the distillery as soon as we opened the production side. So I've been making the booze there since day one. But yeah, I definitely focus on good ingredients. I think that's part of our target with particularly this skew. And so we get the Prosecco rye. We did originally start with common rye, and we originally started with using malt in our mash bill. So there was about 15% malted rye, and then the rest was common rye.
Just to get the fermentation process going, kind of thing.
It was originally, in Canada we can add enzymes, and there's, I would say almost everybody will because you can control it versus having to add malt. It was kind of just at that stage we had kind of been, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is kind of what everybody else does, so we're going to do it. And then within probably 3 or 4 months, we're like, let's try it without it. And the flavour was better, particularly when we moved to Prosecco rye. So
Interesting.
It was more of a flavour decision then to remove the malted grain from the mash bill for sure.
Yeah, just on first sip of this, you're getting spices in here that you haven't got in rye before.
And this is 100% rye.
100% rye, yep.
Very, very interesting on the palate. It's very... I know it says delicate spice on the back, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And it's at 50%.
I was going to say it
50%
does
ABV.
not drink 50%.
Yeah.
It's everything you want a rye to be. The finish has that nice like rye spice that I love about a rye. It does taste like a Canadian rye.
But
like
there's so much more spice in this, though.
There's a good amount, but I don't like spice, but not heat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Particularly the end, I find it gets quite broad towards the finish as well, and it just kind of really spreads out across your palate as it
definitely
kind of,
full bodied. I would say, for sure.
And that's what particularly with this product again. That's why I pushed to have it at 50% ABV. Was part of that reason is we, particularly with the craftsmanship series, we want to really exhibit what we can do and have really full flavored whiskies out there in this portfolio.
And I should say, I love that you guys went 50% ABV on this. 50% is my favorite ABV. It just happens to be the, like, you know, cast strength is great, but sometimes I'm too lazy to add water and I just want to sit on my couch, watch the game. And 50% I find almost always is the best pour and play kind of ABV.
And depends on the product too. Like we'll get to a cask sample later, but to me that drink's perfect at its ABV, and that's about 63, 64. So
yeah. So we should, well, we won't rush ahead, but we have it here.
Yeah.
But let's talk about a little bit more about this rye. So, it sounds like it was like your baby to kind of like get this going.
Yeah, I mean, it was our baby. I mean, it was a collective. I mean, we've got some, even right now, you know, we've got Mark Evangelista, he's our Cooper and warehouse manager. He's awesome. And Matty Orton as well, my distiller who kind of took over from me when I had to move up in the ranks to look after the whiskey. But,
so you guys have an in-house Cooper?
Yeah, so we did a bit of a display the other week for the folks who came out to the estate for the launch of the signature rye, but we've actually always employed basically a recouping policy with a lot of our blends. So we take old wine casks and we, similar to what Cavalan do, what's their terminology? I think it's STR,
STR, yeah.
We do that process. We call it recouping.
Okay.
And we literally have bastardized the English language in doing it because we spell it RECOOP, not OUP. So it's not even a word that makes sense.
Okay.
But we've always done that from the get-go, even back to 2016 days. So we would always do that to enhance some of the products we were making. We would finish them in these recoup barrels. The guy who was doing that for us actually decided during 2020 COVID, not doing this anymore, I'm going to move on. And we ended up buying the business from him. So he came in-house and trained Mark for about 6 months, how to do these barrels, and then taught him some other tricks along the way. So now Mark does that for us, not full-time, but he does it in his spare time because we've been getting pretty busy in the warehouse side of things too.
Right on.
Share with everyone what this costs, because I think a lot of people are going to be blown away by the price of this.
Yeah, $49.95.
Like, what do you get that tastes that good at 50 ABV? That's that price.
Everyone else in the market is like $89.99
at least. And like, I mean, you can't blame them because a lot of these small batch distilleries, they can't really help it. They have huge overhead costs. But the fact that you guys can come in at $50, that is probably the best product in Ontario at $50 by far. Yeah, and it punches way above its weight class.
For sure.
And I wouldn't disagree. And the part of the I guess the difference that we have compared to the craft guys is that, you know, we're a celebrity brand, so it's hard to to communicate that this is a craft product to people. So if we were to sell this at, you know, $80, $90, we probably wouldn't be able to sell through it. And then all of a sudden the series is dead. So being able to do this at this price allows us to hopefully recruit some more of the whiskey geeks, if you will, as well as satisfying the current consumer that we have with Gretzky. So it's a really good middle ground, this one, I think.
I think it's perfect timing for Gretzky's to come out with this because right now everybody's like begging for a integrity bottling, you know, and I think this kind of is exactly what the Canadian market is looking for right now.
Did we say what the maturation on this is? I don't think we did.
No, we didn't. So it's 5 years, minimum 5 years. It's probably a stretch of 5.5 to 7, realistically.
Okay.
Like the oldest group, so I've even got the batch numbers on the front. Like this is 1806. 018, so 1806 would have been June of 2018.
Okay.
Is the youngest whiskey in that, so it's coming up on its 6th year in June. So we only released it 2 months early for a 6-year-old, but there is some stuff from 2017 in there as well.
Okay.
In that blend.
And it's aged in ex-bourbon and virgin oak?
Yeah, so it's 63% virgin oak and 37% once used American bourbon, and there's a little bit like a touch of those recoup casks that I was talking about that Mark makes.
Okay.
Those ones are really, they do get quite astringent if you use it full on in a blend,
right?
With the recouping, but using it subtly, you get some little hints of smoke and things like that, which we do use that process quite a bit in the double oaked whiskey, like one of our more commercial blends. We use that process in, and that's where we get the smokiness from in that one.
I love the rye spice on this. Like, not only do you get the rye spice, but you get spices in here that aren't from rye whiskeys, I feel like you're getting spices that are just like the whole range of like anything you've tasted in whiskey before. You're getting like a little subtle like Christmas spice maybe there. Like a lot of stuff's going on with this. I like it quite a bit.
Even on the nose, I find I get some really nice like citrus notes as well. I think someone even mentioned it was more lime. I get more kind of lemongrass, that kind of lemon myrtle kind of notes on the nose.
I can see that.
And not a trace of dill pickle at all.
No dill.
No.
Not a single thing of dill.
But I don't tend to get that a lot on Canadian ryes.
Yeah, unless I find more pot distilled ryes will get a little bit of that more. So keep in mind, this is 100% column distilled as well. So there's no pot still involved in the rye at all. Obviously with the brandy's a different story, but the signature rye, that was all put through the column.
Very cool. Yeah, getting a little bubblegum sweetness now.
Yeah. No, it's a very well-rounded rye. I would put that up against everybody's rye in Canada
The
right
balance
now.
is very nice because you do get a lot of very subtle notes on it as well.
It's very balanced.
Yeah.
You know what? It's sad because this is in our backyard and I had no idea that this was coming. I mean, it is a new release, so I shouldn't, it's a brand new release, but I'm very happy to see that this is what's happening over there right now because both the brandy and the rye are excellent. I really, really enjoy both of them. I'm wondering if what this would be like at a higher ABV because I love it at 40. I can just imagine the full body flavor that could come off of that.
Yeah,
How old is the brandy? Sorry,
Minimum 4.
Minimum 4.
I think this one actually ended up being closer to 5 years.
Okay.
But again, we'd already decided on VSOP, so we kind of kept that kind of run going with the with the bottle. So I think even now, the next release we do, which will probably be next year on this one when this runs out, will probably be closer to 6 years. So that stuff will be delicious.
Right.
But if you want to try it at cask strength, it's got to come down.
a single cask strength release would be
Of Niagara brandy, that'd be pretty cool.
I think that would be really cool. Actually, I don't think anybody's doing that. Like even you think like France. Okay, so there are some cognacs that are cask strength, but they're so few and far between and hard to get that most people don't even know they exist. So you guys would be cornering a market definitely in Canada.
Yeah, I think we would probably lose it when we try to do the financials on it though, because like even at 40%, this is very, very expensive to make.
Oh, I can
We're left at it like I think most of the stuff in cask is between 57 and 64-ish for the brandy. So not adding the water to that, there would be some financial people who would yell at me, I think.
Can we talk about that a bit? So you mentioned off camera the difference in cost to make a rye versus a brandy, and is it okay to say that the brandy would be like 30% more essentially?
It would be
30 times more.
Yeah, I'd probably say more like 20 times more.
20 times
redoing
more.
the math in my head. Yeah, probably 20 times more, and it's just that grapes are so expensive. Grains cheap, right? So like even when we consider other grains that are expensive grains, it doesn't compare to grapes.
Right.
It's insane, particularly in Niagara, where we don't have a lot of grapes in some years. A bit better than BC at the moment, who just got smashed for the second year in a row with winter damage and won't have any grapes this year. So really unfortunate, but yeah, we're really, really lucky to have access to this stuff too. Like being a part of a wine company and having really good quality wine to be able to make. Or grapes, because we actually make we actually don't even allow the winemakers to make it. We make the wine ourselves. Okay. In the distillery, and then
So you guys matured. Well, you have matured in the past using ice wine barrels.
Yes. Yep. We still do.
What's the process in that, and like what's different between like for people who don't know like an ice wine barrel versus any other barrel you'd finish a whiskey in?
So ice wine barrels obviously previously held ice wine, and ice wine is really, really sweet. So you're getting more that like a Sauterne kind of notes to it, right? Like it's a very, very sweet wine. Where I grew up in Oz, we have like Botrytis Semillons that would be similar kind of vein. But then you're going to get really succulent sugars. Really, I would say even in this one here there is a cask of. Oh, this is going to kill me. It was the Gamay, and it's in a Cab Franc ice wine barrel. Okay. So off this one here, you actually get more of that kind of raspberry, like a raspberry vanilla candy, like even those like Juby ones that you have, like, and you get a little bit of that on that brandy, and that's purely from that one cask. So like even in this one here, there's I would probably think 7 or 8 different cask groups that went into making that.
Like when you finish something in an ice wine barrel, obviously it's very, very sweet. Is it a very quick maturation? It's like it's in and out.
And you can, and if you're having a year where like you've done it, you have to do it in the summer versus the winter, and you don't have as much control when it comes to heat, then those years you may have to like blend it down a little bit when it comes out too, right? Like you can't. It's because in the summer you're getting a lot more extraction faster. So typically with ice wine barrels, anywhere from say 2 to 6 months for us. Okay. But this one here for that Gamay that was in here spent its entire maturation in Cab Franc ice wine barrel. So it was pretty full on. So it's like one barrel out of probably, I think we did, half and do rough maths in my head. It might have been maybe a dozen barrels went into this, maybe 12 or 15 barrels, and one of them was a Cab Franc ice wine barrel.
So I'm actually curious now that you mentioned summers, and we're an hour away, roughly an hour and a half, depending on who's driving and what road you're taking.
It is Toronto.
Yeah, exactly.
It could take 4 hours.
It could take up to 3 hours, I guess.
Across Mississauga.
That's true. But being in Niagara on the Lake, there's a different climate. Like for those of you that don't know, there's a different climate there than there is, like a half hour circumference around.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at from the escarpment, from like I remember I was living on the escarpment at one point, and my buddy Jeff Dillon, he's living down near the lake a little bit closer, and even between us, probably north was maybe 4 kilometers.
Wow.
And 7 degrees difference in temperature.
There you go.
Because it's just
Yeah.
like even that lake effect, right? It's huge down there, particularly for the vineyards. But the warehouse side of things, yeah, it's more the extremes of the seasons for us. I think in Canada, the extreme cold, and then obviously in the summer we get quite warm as well. So
Yeah.
So that's going to play a factor as well on the spirits that you're aging, even I guess the wine as well. Would you say that it helps age your spirit a little faster than the surrounding areas?
I wouldn't say surrounding areas. I don't think it's necessarily. I mean, temperature I think is probably one of the biggest parts in maturation, but I think it's more the extremes. Your Scotland versus Texas versus Taiwan, right? Like they're all your different extremes, and I think that we're kind of in the middle of all that. In that we've got a steady maturation, I think, in Niagara, where it's going in and out at a nice constant flow, whereas obviously with Cavalan, it's just bang, 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 bang. After,
super hot, yeah.
And then versus Scotland, that's cold because it's slow because the temperature and then the humidity, everything plays a huge part in that.
Yeah, it would be more like a Newfoundland kind of climate.
Yeah, so I think, within Canada, like that would be more, Maritimes versus Ontario.
Correct, yeah.
Particularly where we are, obviously, we've got 40 Creek, like 2 kilometres away, so
yeah,
we've obviously very similar aging to those guys,
right.
And Dillon's is not far as well.
So you brought them up, 40 Creek and Dillon's. I mean, I guess those are like your neighbors, so technically your direct competition.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I gotta say that this, like, I don't want to badmouth anybody, but this annihilates what I've tried from those two.
I appreciate it. I mean, and at the end of the day, like for me, because I've been doing this literally for my entire life, like we figured out that this is 25 years in beverage production for me, and I'm more about the community of people when they're making spirits. So Jeff's a good friend of mine. Bill is now a friend of mine as well. So like, I think the industry needs more of that, even if, for example, if Jeff didn't like my spirits, that's fine.
Right.
But we can still support each other and bring each other up. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a different cat to what Jeff's producing. And funnily enough, like we both use we were using similar rye. We both get it from Brent Mills, but a very different product.
Well, I would even say it's different than anything that came out of Gretzky's before.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So it's I would call this whiskey a whiskey geek whiskey.
Yeah, it's this is kind of like a rebirth to the distillery almost, right? It's like it's very different than what was being produced before.
I mean, the 99 had flirted with the higher ABV, right? And that was that ice wine cask?
No, Cab Sauv barrels. Was
okay.
That one? Yeah.
So they all had, I guess, the red was a different wine cask as well.
Yeah, they was more, and the red wine barrels for that one is just more generic across the board. There's no specific red wine cask we go to, only because we use so much.
Okay.
So we can't get picky.
Right.
But with the 99 proof, we can get a bit pickier.
So when you say like you don't get picky, is there like, I always kind of had this question, and maybe it's like more for a broader answer, but like when you're maturing whiskey in a wine barrel, is there certain vintages that you're like, you try the wine and then like that vintage is going to mature the whiskey any different than another vintage? Or is it kind of just you get what you get? Or like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, like if you pick the best cask from the best winery in the world and put whiskey in it, you're going to have some really good whiskey.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, is a standard Niagara Cab Sauv different to somebody else's Niagara Cab Sauv? Possibly not. The real care that I find is the wine just needs to be sound.
Yeah.
If you've got wine that's gone VA or is mousy, then whatever you put in there is going to be mousy and get VA.
Is there ever like a time in the industry where like a whiskey maker is drinking a wine and they look at the vintage like, I need this barrel, and they go out and try to source it? Does that ever happen? Is it even possible?
What did this is going to kill me now. Actually, I think I saw something on your bench. Don't Blue Spot did that with Shadow Montelena?
Did they?
And they did some stuff
with the green.
Yeah,
the green
they did a couple of those with Green. They do a couple of winery specific.
That's right.
ones, so,
You're right. Yeah.
They did Shadow Montelena, I think, and then they did what's the name out west in BC? It's going to kill me now. It's a BC winery. They did it with. Viewers, figure it out and send these guys.
Comment down below. Yeah. Well, there. You're right. There is with the green. There's 2 or 3 different types of wine casks. Is there Zinfandel in there at some point? No, maybe not.
Can't remember, but yes, I mean, but whether people source that out, I know that High West did that as well with Prisoner recently. They did that last year, I think. So there's some collabs going on there, like it's where they actually now are doing it, where the wine and the whiskey are both getting released by 2 separate companies, which is pretty cool. So there's. The problem with us is we are a winery and we're a distillery, so I don't get to branch out and do as many collabs as other people
that
because
makes sense.
we're too busy doing our own collabs in-house, but it'd be nice to eventually.
It's a cool advantage, though, because then at least, I mean, I think where we could see the most innovation is with these single cask releases. Like if you guys ever ventured into that, because you have the ice wine, for example. So you have the white and the red, which drink very different.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, would you compare a red ice wine to a port, or it's still even more syrupy than that?
Yeah, it's more syrupy than that, yeah. Because port's got more of those darker fruits, and I would find that a Cab Franc ice wine would be more vibrant fruit, so more your strawberries.
Okay.
Whereas like your ports is more your sultana or your raisins. We call them sultanas in Australia.
Yeah.
That raisins, dark fruit
Right.
versus vibrant fruit, which you get from the ice wine.
I would love to know what Wayne Gretzky's single malt would taste like in a red ice wine barrel. And just like a single cask, let it run, who cares how long, and then just whatever happens. Yeah,
well, we'll have to look at it. I did get some barrels. I got one more barrel of, because the problem is ice wine isn't as popular as it once was as well, right? Like that's what
it's not
the
cheap.
industry is built off. It's not cheap, and we don't make huge volumes of it because we sell it in 200ml bottles.
Yeah.
So like this week, for example, I was asking winemaker, and they were doing some ice wine disgorging. They're taking some casks out, and I said, like, if you've got some spare barrels, I've got some friends in Scotland who wanted some casks. And they only had one for me. So, like, we're now hoping to maybe ship one cask over to Scotland for them to use.
Right.
From Dramore. So
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a cool little playground for you to experiment, I think, because you have the options for wine. You guys make great wine. You have a bunch of different, like, wine casks that you could choose from. And then you go back to your standard virgin oak, and that's great too. And you have your brandy, so you can use a brandy cask or a once used brandy cask, and you have, I mean, the sky's the limit for you guys.
Yeah.
And like even that the Glenfiddich Winter Storm, that was one of Andrew Peller's barrels. That was one from Peller Estates.
Okay.
So that was one of the ice wine barrels that we shipped over. And
Nice.
It was unluckily before my time, but the at the time the director of operations, one of our EVPs of winemaking, and Josh got to go to Scotland, and they got rolled the red carpet for Glenfiddich and got to try and do everything. It was incredible.
That's pretty cool.
I was told. But sadly, before my time as in the program, so
I
don't
can
get to
imagine what that
experience it.
warehouse looks like.
And having access to it too,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Getting the red carpet rollouts, what gets you into places. So yeah.
Should we move on to the single cast?
So let's move on to the single cast.
Great, because I already have.
Have you?
Yeah.
You have a trivia for Tim as well.
Oh yeah. Do you want to do? Okay. So
No, let's go to the single cask,
We'll
and then
do
we'll
the
go to the
single cask and
then we'll put him on the spot and decide whether or
Yeah.
not we should include it in
That's
the
right.
podcast.
I should have walked around the estate today. I've done some trivia. We've got all over the property, right? There's photos and trivia all over.
I would imagine.
And I don't really read a lot of it. This will be fun.
You're too focused. You're very focused. They hired the right guy for the job.
So this is kind of like a mystery. You haven't told us what this sample is. You just said that you pulled it from a cask.
Yeah.
So it is a single cask, right?
Yep.
Rob's really good at dissecting stuff. He's got a knack for it. So maybe he could tell you what he thinks this is.
I honestly don't think he'll pick it. I think some of your viewers who have tried this before, potentially. This is one of my babies that I always take to Whiskey Wonderland, Victoria Whiskey Festival. So
Okay.
that's probably going to give it away to anyone watching who's had hotel dreams with me at any of those places, because I do take it a lot. James, if you're watching, this is the... Yeah.
So, a good amount of char on this cask, for sure, I feel
So
like.
is this a rye as well?
Nope.
I wouldn't say rye. I'd say this could...
It's got a good
This
amount
is
of
a
spice. I like the spice.
It's funny, I haven't tried this in probably, I would say, 4 months.
It's got a good amount of vanilla. So is it ex-bourbon barrel?
This is 60 what percent?
64.
It drinks like it's probably like 48, 50, 52 tops.
There's some nice, towards the finish, I get some nice kind of biscotti kind of notes on it.
Nice, yeah.
for
Even
sure.
a little bit of coconut on this one, but the mouthfeel is what kind of, I find, for me anyway, what really drives this whiskey. It's just the viscosity that it comes across on the palate is just delicious.
So I'd be blown away if this was a single malt like barley. I don't think it's that. You said it wasn't rye. The only thing I could think of is it's corn or wheat, and I'm leaning towards wheat, which is weird.
Not wheat.
It's not wheat.
Nope.
So it's corn then.
Nope.
It's not right. Is it rice?
Is it rice?
Nope. Not rice either.
Because we've had the crazy rice.
Is it
whiskey.
quinoa?
Do you want me to tell you?
Oat.
100% oats.
Wow.
Oats. No way.
Oats whiskey, yeah.
That's amazing for an oat whiskey. I'm actually shocked.
I think this is the
why
first
aren't people
time
more?
we've
Why aren't more
had-
people doing oat whiskey?
First time we've had oats.
Because it's a royal pain in the bum to make.
ferment,
Yeah.
yeah.
So oats, if you've ever added, this is the best analogy I always give people. Grab a bowl of oats, add hot water. What happens? It gets thick. It gets gummy.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to try and lauter will never be able to work with oats. Anyone who doesn't use a continuous column generally probably won't be able to make oats because you're going to destroy a pot
Right.
still by trying to put it in there. It's hard to move around. So even today, funnily enough, I was distilling oats. We do it once a year.
Okay.
And we usually do it at the end of the week. And this run this year, for some reason, the oats grain has been really difficult and we can't get through it in a day. So we have to split it over 2 days and just really clean the still well in between, because what happens on the plates, like say the hole is, yay big, and then eventually it just goes like this because the oats just,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
oats just really
Just cake on.
Cake on.
So it's
Yeah.
more of a pain in the ass than rye is to work with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say honestly, because I spent so long making rye that this is a walk in the park. Like for me, I would probably say this is a 3 out of 10
Okay.
on the difficulty scale,
Right.
and oats would be probably an 8 or 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah,
So we're not going to see oat whiskey in your core
So it's not getting
range.
really popular anytime soon.
Yeah, this one here I've only got 4 barrels of from that year in 2018, and then so that's just over 6 years, that one now. And then the next years I did about 12 barrels each year.
And this is a recharred ex-bourbon cask?
This is a virgin oak.
Virgin
Yeah,
oak.
but it's a lighter char, so it's only a char 2.
Huh.
And we do that with most of our, actually nearly with all of them, with the exception of the recouped barrels, we do a char 3. But the barrels that we buy, we do get those from Independent Stave Company down in Kentucky, and they do a phenomenal job. Except for the year they blocked me out because Maker's Mark needed all the barrels. But that's fine. I've got some more other stuff in there. But so we do a char 2, and I find that you don't get as much of the smokiness from a char 2. You get a hint of it, but you don't get. It's not full blown, and it's not full blown vanilla. And I find that that's when you're getting into bourbon territory. Then
Right.
those flavors end up taking over, and you can't let the grain express itself. So one day I'd love to release 200ml bottles of a grain series where we've got, because at the moment I've got aging some barley, but dehulled barley, so we don't have the husks on. So
Okay.
we are a distillery that runs grain on, so we don't lauter. So we also have a hammer mill. So if we put malted barley through that, it would not get through, and
Okay.
we wouldn't be able to lauter, and you'd have all these green horrible characters. So we use we've got the barley, we've got some wheat aging at the moment, rye, and then the oats, and we've got our own. We've got a couple of variations on corn, we've got some cleaner, I would say Canadian corn, but we have also got some more robust, 63% ABV entry proof distilled to into cask coming through. That's more of a bourbon style, and it's funny. I never really the Jim Beam nuttiness the stuff we've had coming off, it's super nutty.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's just got and from the new make, like just before it's been barreled, like it just smells like nuts. It's incredible. With some of that corn.
That's wild that the new make would be like that.
Yeah, and even in the distillery you can smell it.
Really?
Like during the fermentation, you can just smell like, yep, we've got corn on this week. It's like yesterday I was doing corn and today oats.
Yeah.
So what does oats smell like on the still?
Off the still, it's still got that creamy. Even on like, it's got. I find all of our products off the still have this really good. And I should have brought some new make samples next time for you to taste. But off the still, we get this really kind of, I would say, bakery kind of notes. So fresh bread,
Nice.
and those kind of notes. And
I think
then
it
you
would
get
smell like oatmeal, wouldn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's this, but without the oak.
Right.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Very cool.
That's actually really, really cool. And yeah, that was my last grain guess. I guessed quinoa before I
I
guessed
can't believe you
oats.
couldn't guess oats.
Yeah, I know. Right?
And even then, I don't know. Like Koval do one.
That's right, they do, yeah.
And I'm not sure it's 100% oats or not.
I think it's
whether
a straight oat.
right. And then I think Corsair did one at one point. That was a straight oat as well. But of course, yeah, just 'cause it's so difficult. So when this comes out, which I'm hoping we will get this to market by November, and I'm hoping if I can convince marketing, if you're watching, please let me do it, to release it at cask strength.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we'll have the first introduction with the baby with the signature rye at 50, still packed with flavour, but then this will get released later in the year, and we'll probably only do it. We've only got a couple of casks, so whether we bottle it all, will we save some, will be another discussion. But if we can get it out at cask strength, I think there'll be some happy people out there.
So what's Wayne's involvement in this? Like, does he have to give the green light on any of this stuff, or?
It depends. Definitely label changes. He does. And I know people are going to say he just says that, but we have a really good connection with the family. Glenn does most of the business for Wayne, but he always takes it back to him. So, he wouldn't have full control over the making of this blend because that's what I'm hired to do. And if he can do it, then he can have my job, and I'll go and break all these records in the NHL, and we'll call it even. But yeah, so they do have final say in kind of definitely packaging decisions and even just product direction and things like that. And we keep them updated and meet with them quarterly. So
all right, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about Wayne Gretzky, we do have some Wayne Gretzky trivia for you. Since
This is when we turn the microphone off.
Master, you figure the master distiller at Wayne Gretzky should know a little bit about the boss.
Yeah.
So these are super simple questions, okay?
Oh,
My
Jesus.
3-year-old nephew knows the answers.
Yeah, I'm not going to know the answer.
All right, they're very easy.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if you should have preference.
Are you a
there.
big hockey fan? We should quantify. Are you a hockey fan, or is it?
Okay, I like hockey,
Yeah.
but that's where my involvement in hockey ends.
Okay.
Too many games. I can't
Okay.
get behind
What
it.
are you into? Aussie rules football?
I am into Aussie rules
Yeah.
football. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love Aussie rules. That's actually one of the reasons I came to Canada was when, as a part of my winemaking degree, I had to do a Northern Hemisphere vintage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd met some Canadian guys who lived just in the same unit block as me, and they played Australian rules football for Hamilton. So I had to, as part of my degree, do a Northern Hemisphere vintage. So I came across to Canada and played footy for Hamilton, and I basically worked for them volunteering for close to 15 years.
Rob, I don't know how you watched like Aussie rules you've watched, but we aired at TSN. It is no joke. Like it is insane. These guys are rough as hell.
Really?
I mean, I've never seen so much insane like hitting before.
Yeah.
Is it similar to that sport in Italy? I forget what it's called, calcio or something or whatever, and they just like fight. Essentially, they just fight.
But that was more the 80s, but then now like
It's more like rugby, but kind of like without the formations, and there's more kicking involved.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't throw it, and there's no offsides. So that's the main reason why everyone gets hurt, because you're standing there and there's a guy running at 30 kilometers behind you and just decks you. So like you're just not expecting it. So that's where people get
the
hurt.
collisions are out of control. I'm not sure how there's not more injuries, but it's because everyone's tough as hell.
Yeah.
Aussies are
tough.
super tough. Okay, Wayne Gretzky trivia. This is very easy. First one's just true or false. All right. Wayne Gretzky is the all-time NHL leader in goals with 894. True or false?
True.
That is true.
Yes.
That is true. That's the most all time.
I was going to wonder if it was a trick question whether it was the actual number that was wrong. Here's the all-time.
It's like, ooh, sorry, you were one off. It was actually 893.
or it was some stupid number like 3,500. I'm like, yeah, that's it.
You know what? It crossed my mind that you would actually do that.
Just
Though.
one
Like,
number.
is that
I'm
the
like,
exact
ooh,
number?
Actually, it's one off.
But no one else would get that.
True or false? Wayne Gretzky was born in Brantford, Ontario in 1961.
True.
Actually, it's 1962, unfortunately. No, I'm joking. It was 1961. That is true. Yeah, good old Brantford boy. You drive by Wayne Gretzky Expressway or Wayne Gretzky, whatever, when you're on the 403 all the time.
Yeah. And it's actually, that's a part, and it honestly just happened by chance, but like getting a rye from Brant County really links in like all this rye that goes into here. I think even, I'd have to talk to Volker, but we could probably put it straight down to the one farm because that Prosecco rye that they get in, only goes to them, and it's from the one guy just around the corner in Brant County.
That's
really
very
cool.
Yeah, we love, like, we've talked to like a lot of like local distillers and distillers in Canada, and sourcing local grain is always important for them. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, multiple choice. This one's multiple choice. All right, so Austin Matthews scored 69 goals in the regular season this year. That's the most since Ovechkin's 65 in 2018. How many times did Wayne Gretzky have 69 or more goals in one season? 2, 3, or 4 times?
4.
That is correct.
Yes.
4 times. He had
Let's end it now.
he had 71, 73, 87, and 92
That's
in
insane.
his season.
That's insane. 92. That's
Yeah.
10 more goals in games.
That's wild. That's wild. That might have been an 80-game season, too.
interesting.
Wayne Gretzky has
There was
set,
an 84 season, 84 game season 1 year, 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was an 80-game season back then, I think, too. Anyway, very impressive.
Semantics.
Yeah.
This is another multiple choice. Wayne Gretzky set an all-time record for most consecutive MVP titles. How many consecutive titles did he have? 6, 7, or 8 in a row?
7.
Wrong.
Damn it.
8. Oh. He had 8 consecutive MVP titles. No other major sport has had more than someone get 4 consecutive. That's in the 4 major sports. But yeah, 8 in a row.
Yeah.
That's
Madness.
wild.
Yeah, his stats are ridiculous. No one will ever touch those stats.
No.
Like, the only one that's going to be broken, maybe, is the goal one.
If Ovechkin can score, maybe like what? He needs like pace for like
He needs to play
30
another
something the next 2 years. If he has
Yeah,
30,
I think he needs 70 more goals.
30-ish a year, 35 a year, yeah. It's possible. He could do it. Last one, true or false? Wayne Gretzky is the most dominant athlete of all time.
True.
That is true. That is true. Of course. 100% true. 100% true. Just to add to that, Wayne Gretzky is the only player to record a 200-point season, and he did that 4 times. He has almost 1,000 more career points than the second-place person. Absolutely insane. You look at his stats, and it's just like, how?
It doesn't make sense.
It's wild.
It doesn't
it's
make
absolutely
sense.
wild. So thanks for doing that. It was more just like a...
Good for you on.
Past.
It's,
I got better than 50%.
you
You
crushed
did
it.
really well,
You crushed
actually.
it. You crushed it.
Actually, I went to an Australian teachers college, and their marking is insane. So you technically destroyed that test.
Sweet, yeah.
You get like a 50 in Australia. They're like, yeah, that was a great mark. I was like, what?
You passed. Please get degrees. That's what we used to say when I was at uni.
Yeah, at my university, we used to say B's and C's get degrees.
Yeah.
And
No, P's get degrees. You just got to hit that 50.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah,
awesome.
you just need the P.
why don't you tell us what's coming up next? I'm sure you got a lot of cool
Yeah,
things
so I
coming up.
mean, as we're talking about, like the amount of grains that I've got aging,
Yeah.
it's going to be fun. So the first step, obviously, is getting this out in the market and seeing how we do, and then seeing how the reception is, and which ways do people want us to move. And again, a lot of what we do, because we're a bigger corporation, we have to move with that. We have to make money and report to our shareholders. So we'll see how this goes, and then there's a few more in the pipes coming. The next being hopefully the oats at 100%. Oats at cask strength, so I won't have to touch that, which is great. I can just pull it from barrel and put it in a bottle. So we're hoping that will come out later in the year. And then probably in the spring next year, we're still looking at what kind of products we may do. And again, it will depend on the success of this, but probably a 4 grain will probably what I'll start looking at for early-ish next year.
Okay.
is kind of the next one. But we'll probably only have these craftsmanship series like this signature rye. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's only done one batch of it. There's a little bit of it. There's not a lot, but we're hoping this will disappear in 6 months, and then maybe I'll make it again in 3 or 4 years when we want to blend up some more rye. But so each release that we do under this series will be just a one-off.
Okay.
Every time, so I won't need to replicate it, which is great. I can just at the time when I get asked by marketing, to put stuff together, I can look at what we've got in the warehouse and try and then put something into that. So yeah.
How many bottles? Sorry, did we ask this already? How many bottles came out of this?
There was a bit. I did about 6,000 liters, so about 8,000 bottles of that one.
Okay, nice.
Whereas the oats will probably only be 400 bottles.
That makes sense.
Okay. So we're going to try and offset with, a bigger release probably in the spring, and then we'll do some cooler stuff in the fall. And if we can get enough traction, then I'm hoping we can do multiple stuff throughout the year. And I mean, you talked about single casks before. I've got one cask group that's the exact same liquid, but there's 39 different casks of different toasts, different char, and there's 4 barrels of each. So like 148 barrels or something like that. Of someone's going to do that math and say he's way wrong. But I'll talk about it. So like from a pick your own cask, like a cask pick program, like that cask group I'm trying to not touch, because I'd love to be able to just go, okay, here's the 148 casks, and there's 39 different types in here. Go nuts.
That's cool.
And allow people to really look at it. So, but we'll see how that goes. We need to really get this stuff off the ground. And as I mentioned, being a celebrity brand, there's always that, that stigmatism that you get, and trying to get away from that, I think this is the first step in that. So
I think so. And you know what? I really recommend this brandy as well. I think people definitely need to check that out.
You know what? People in Ontario are going to be so happy.
So in Ontario, anybody can buy this on
e-com, yeah.
So we'll drop the link below.
Okay.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah.
And then the people can, honestly, guys, you're going to want to buy this. This is unreal. And get the brandy as well. Definitely get the brandy as well. They're both excellent.
Something needs to give in Ontario to support more of the Ontario producers.
Would you be interested in getting that out into Alberta? Because I bet you could do that a lot
I think
easier.
Alberta are taking this, and Alberta are probably getting 1 or 2 casks of the oats.
Oh, no way.
The sales team are pretty...
See, they know where it's at. They know what to do.
Yeah.
That's it.
We're hoping they'll get 1 or 2. I shouldn't say definitely, because, again, if marketing actually watch this, then I'll probably get in strife. But yeah, the plan is to probably the oats to be estate and our own e-com, and then a little bit going to Alberta as well.
Okay.
But yeah, Alberta are great. Like, their support for whiskey in general.
Yes.
Like, at the end of the day, I'm a big whiskey nerd as well, right? Like, that's who I am. So, like, I obviously shop outside of Ontario as well.
Yeah.
For things that we can't discuss on the internet. But I obviously, just the way that they're set up and the way that the industry runs there is so much better than what we've got here.
Yeah.
It's all legal now. It's as of January 1st, 2024. Yeah. It's all legal to buy anywhere in Canada.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
I didn't even
There
know.
you go.
I should have brought... We also just did a whiskey sour in like a bottled whiskey sour.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Like a pre-mixed cocktail.
Yeah.
Okay.
but at like boozy, so it's 30%.
Okay.
It's
Nice. So it'd be a nice like starter
So
to
you
the
just
night,
pour
and then
it
you
on a rock and you're good.
Yeah, and it was fun when we were putting that one together. We had to figure that out because neat, it was to me it was probably a little bit too acidic, a little bit too sweet. But you pour it over ice, and that just dissipates. So we kind of made that call in the production stages of how are people going to drink this. And so on the bottle, it's got pour over ice because you can't. It's hard to make a product that can be consumed neat and be consumed over a full glass of ice. It's very difficult because you're trying to cater for someone who wants things diluted versus someone who wants things neat. So it's a tough game. But yeah, so that one there is really, really good. And there's 7-year-old corn spirit in that, or cooked corn whiskey in that.
No way.
Wow.
I had an old barrel lot that it had some interesting characters, I would say, that kind of, pushed itself towards being a cocktail. There was some... From the barrels that we got from a supplier, so I once used American bourbon. I won't say the supplier was, but there was some really interesting notes of like cinnamon and these weird notes that I didn't feel good about putting into our core range.
Okay.
So we kind of just put it aside, and we've been talking about doing these cocktails for years, these bottled cocktails, and we just we had to do a lot of, particularly with the whiskey sour. There isn't any on the market currently. It's the LCBO.
Yeah.
They will be taking that one. But their thing was that like no one does it for a reason because it's difficult to get, because the
balance
product is opaque, and then getting the balance and getting it stable. Because having a product like that that's stable is probably the hardest part.
For sure.
So we spent, I think, 2 years in research for the whiskey sour to just make it shelf stable.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. That one's pretty good price too. That's $32.95, I think.
Okay.
And it's a 750ml bottle.
Yeah.
At 30%. So it's all whiskey. It's good.
Not bad.
So there was, I'm gonna age myself a little bit here, but there was a club called 107 in the GTA.
I remember.
Yeah, and it was rock.
Boys.
We used to go for rock night all the time. It was a Friday night, and whiskey sour was like my go-to drink because your breath would be okay, and it was like like an easy drinking, kind of night. And I don't know. So that was like, unless I was drinking beer, I was drinking whiskey sours that night. So that's interesting.
That's still pretty like fancy for
Yeah. Yeah,
if you don't want to drink beer, I'll have a whiskey sour.
For a rock club. I think back to what a loser I was at 19, but
I wish I could drop in a picture of you right now. Please send me one. Please dig out a picture of
there's
you.
absolutely no chance.
Come on, give me a 19-year-old Rob picture. I would love
to walk around his house and just
love to
find
drop that
something.
in.
We just found our cold open because
I'm gonna talk to Trish, and she's gonna get me one.
Jeremy tries to find the most embarrassing moments of our podcast and throws that as our cold open every time.
That's the people want to see. That's what they want to see. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Super excited what's coming out of Gretzky Distillery now that you're behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And I mean, very impressed with these things. And if you're in Ontario, you can get them.
Yes.
So people will be happy to hear that.
And at a great price.
And you guys are giving that away for sure at that price. So
yeah.
Yeah, I honestly think so too.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But that's the thing. I mean, it's the first one, and we really need to hit the ground running. So
no one's gonna be disappointed from paying that price. 100% guaranteed.
Guarantee that.
Yeah.
I can guarantee that.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Comment down below, and thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Cheers.
See you next time. Cheers.